Welcome to the Sell My Business podcast. I'm your host, Jeffrey Feldberg. This podcast is brought to you by Deep Wealth and the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience. Your liquidity event is the largest and most important financial transaction of your life, but unfortunately, up to 90% of liquidity events fail. Think about all that time, money, and effort wasted. Of the quote-unquote successful liquidity events, most business owners leave anywhere from 50% to over 100% of their deal value in the buyer's pocket and don't even know it. I should know. I said no to a seven-figure offer and yes to mastering the art and science of a liquidity event. 2 years later, I said yes to a different buyer with a nine-figure offer. Are you thinking about an exit or liquidity event? If you believe that you either don't have the time or you'll prepare closer to your liquidity event, think again. Don't become a statistic and make the fatal mistake of believing that the skills that built your business are the same ones for your liquidity event. After all, how can you master something you've never done before? Let the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience and our 9-step roadmap of preparation help you capture the maximum value for your liquidity event. At the end of this episode, take a moment to hear from business owners just like you who went through the Deep Wealth Experience. Steve Preda is a leadership team coach whose passion is to help emerging privately owned businesses grow and thrive. He pursues it by simplifying and teaching management and strategy concepts used by large companies and elite consulting firms. His new book is Pinnacle, 5 Principles That Take Your Business to the Top of the Mountain. Welcome to the Deep Wealth Sell My Business podcast. And as usual, I have an epic episode lined up for you today. We have a guest who is a thought leader, an author, and someone who is just going to rock your world when you look at your business today. And I have a bit of a rhetorical question before I introduce our guest. So all you business owners out there, when it comes to your business, would you like to know how to take it to the next level? Can you take it to the next level? What if there were 5 principles that you could do that would take your business to the pinnacle, to the very top of the mountain? That's exactly what we're going to be talking about today with our guest, Steve. Steve, welcome to the Deep Wealth Sell My Business podcast. And as always, such a pleasure to have you with us. Steve, I'm curious. There's always a story behind the story. What's your story? What got you to where you are today?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And this is one of the best introductions I've ever got. So thank you for that. So my story, your theme, the podcast theme here is the liquidity events. This was pretty much my world up until 10 years ago when I moved to the United States from Central Eastern Europe, specifically Hungary. I was a business owner. I started and scaled and then exited my investment banking firm. And we're focusing on small and medium-sized businesses, how to prepare them for sale, help them go and find buyers. And around 2011, I had this feeling that things are changing in Europe. We had a huge demographic crisis. We had political polarization. Hungary was going in a direction which I felt was not helping my business. And for the long term, our business was really reliant on international investors coming to Hungary, buying companies, investing in companies, and the government was more inward looking and becoming more of building an economy with local entrepreneurs. And then I decided to basically exit my business, move over here. And when I arrived, I looked around, I started coaching other entrepreneurs, worked with some businesses in an investment banking capacity. And then I started talking about some of the ideas that I have learned along the way, became a speaker on the speaking circuit, talking to CEO peer groups. And then I started writing books. And last year I came up with a book titled Viable, which is all about making businesses viable and how to think about this whole process. And just last week, we launched with my co-author, Gregory Cleary, another book called Pinnacle, which is all about helping a private business owner to take their business to the top of the mountain with the principles that you referenced in your introduction.
Steve, what's going to be particularly interesting today, you have the background of helping business owners get through a liquidity event. You've been doing that. And now you come along with a new operating system for business owners to be able to operate from. But I suspect it's grounded in what you did with Buyable. And how do you just create these businesses that people want to buy and really help you out as a business owner? When you're brought in as a coach and as a leader into a business, why don't we start with some of the low-hanging fruit? When you're working with business owners and their businesses, what would be some of the more common mistakes that business owners are making, maybe they don't even realize it, that are getting them into trouble that you're dealing with in your book, Pinnacle, and the 5 principles that you have?
It's a great question. So first of all, I just want to shed the light a little bit on the connection, why I went from investment banking to operating system. So as an investment banker, I love doing deals. It was really very exciting. There was lots of ups and downs, obviously, and you could feel really successful when we help someone decrease the value of their business and help them to live a better life. However, looking back, I feel a little bit of a tinge of regret because I feel like some of the businesses that we saw them too early. So if I knew what I know now, I would have helped these business owners to improve their business and to get more money for their business. And that's what this operating system is about. My focus now is about helping people build those viable businesses that eventually they may not want to even sell because it makes as much money as they need, and it also engages them and helps them have a fulfilling life. Now, what are the major mistakes that people make? I would say the biggest mistake is that they don't build a team. So they keep on making all the decisions themselves. And when the time comes to hand over the keys, then there's no one to take the keys because they don't actually have a business. They have an extension of themselves, which no one dares to buy, because if that genius is not there, then the helpers will not be able to run the business. So the biggest mistake people make is that they don't build a team and they don't make the business into a self-managing entity.
Steve, I love what you're talking about. You are preaching to the choir here at Deep Wealth. And I want to circle back to your comments as an investment banker, because really as an investment banker, I know you feel a twinge of regret, as you're saying, but really when you take a step back, as an investment banker, you were doing what investment bankers do. When a business owner comes to you, you're then taking that company out to the marketplace, and the marketplace is speaking to what that value is. Now, our thesis at Deep Wealth is exactly like what you're saying. Most business owners are not prepared with their business to have the liquidity event in the first place. And it's not really their fault, because how do you master something you've never done before? A little bit of a rhetorical question there. So I hear you on the regret side. And I also hear you on, hey, if they would have prepared a little bit more, they could have done that much better. And so we're in alignment there. I mean, our 9-step roadmap with our 90-day Deep Wealth experience is all about that. Pinnacle, your book, is all about that. And let's talk a little bit about the management team, because that's also what we see at Deep Wealth. One of the fatal mistakes, one of the number one fatal mistakes that we see with most businesses. And I would take it a step further, Steve. I don't know if you'll agree with this. You can tell me. Even if a business owner has a management team, a lot of business owners, and I put myself in this category, we can be type A personalities and we really want to control everything, and we have a management team, but nothing happens unless it runs through us. And even though there's a management team, that business really doesn't run without that owner. So here's the question for you, Steve, because on paper, it sounds really simple. Well, just hire smart people that are going to run the business. You're not going to be there. But easier said than done. Can you talk with us of some strategies in your book, Pinnacle? What can a business owner do to start correcting that mistake of the business not running without him or her?
Yeah, so that leads us to the 5 principles. So what are the 5 principles that we talk about in Pinnacle? So these are people, purpose, playbooks, performance, and profits. So the idea is that if you create the right culture and you empower your people, and you give them a powerful purpose, and you define and ingrain your playbooks and optimize them, and then you have a system of execution so that everyone performs at a high level, then the byproduct is profit. But if you can even take this a step further and you can benchmark yourself to the elite players in your industry and figure out, engineer your business so that you deliver that high level of profitability and make it sustainable, in the long term. So what a business owner can do to have that leadership team is to start thinking in a structured way about creating this and dedicating to a process of creating that. And I believe, and it's my experience, and I work in a community of business guides. We are over 100 Pinnacle business guides. And our experience is that we can help these companies grow by 20% at the top line. And if you do that for 5 years, then you are going to grow the value of your business by the top line of your business by 2.5 times, so the size of your business. And if you double your profit margin during that time, then you can quintuple the value of your business. So that's our recipe: is you can 5x the value of your business over 5 years with these 5 principles.
And absolutely terrific. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? But as usual, it's always in the details of how do you do that and what does that look like? And so, Steve, maybe what we can do is why don't we start, as an example, with the people, which is mountain number 1 in the book. And when it comes to people, obviously, each one of these 5 mountains that you talk about, that can be an episode in and of itself, Steve. But if we look to the people for mountain number 1, what should be some takeaways for our listeners of what they should be thinking about or even doing coming out of this episode that you and I are talking about this?
For each mountain, each of the 5 principles, we have defined 3 practices. And if you focus on these 3 practices, then you can really make the most of these principles. So for the people principle, the 3 practices is culture, it's functions, and it's coaching. And the idea is that you want to define and articulate the culture of your business with the help of a handful of core values, which describe the behaviors that your best people are exhibiting. Then you want to make sure that you figure out what are the functions that you need in the business in order to grow to the next level, and what are the outcomes each of the functions have to deliver for you. And then you empower people in the organization to lead each of those functions, and then you coach them to be successful in leading the function. And the people who are high on your culture fit and high on productivity, they are your A players and A potentials. And those people who are either not high on the culture fit or not highly productive, they are B or C players. And what we teach is that you want to focus on your A potential and your A players, and not on your B and C's, because the B's and C's, they are not A potentials. They don't have the potential to become A players, and you are wasting your time. You cannot make sheep into wolves. So what you want to do is you want to pick those people who have the potential to be a 9 or a 10 on the productivity and help them be as good as they can possibly be. Keep your A players engaged by challenging them, keeping them in the flow, and then empower your people so they become mini CEOs of their functions, so that they look at the function as a business within the business that they are strategically going to grow over time.
And Steve, what's really interesting is you start with culture. And culture is one of our favorite areas at Deep Wealth. In step number 2, we call that X factors that insanely increase the value of your business. And culture is an X factor, because for us, and for our listeners, Steve's nodding his head, you can't see that, but I can. Culture, it's like a fingerprint. It's unique to every business. Your competition, with all of their capital, they can copy your technology. They can hire your people away, but they cannot copy your culture. They cannot buy your culture. And I take it a step further. If you have the right culture, they're not going to be able to hire your people away. So it really becomes a terrific self-serving way of helping the business grow and just really making a difference and getting that out there. So you've nailed it on the people side, and you're talking a lot about culture and not having those B and C players. And I guess implicit in that, Steve, is making sure that our leaders, they want to hire people that are smarter and better than themselves. Because if you have a B or C leader, B or C leaders, they're not really leaders, they're probably managers, and they feel threatened by the A players. So the culture is just such a foundational concept of what's in there. And you also talk about your 3rd principle, or your 3rd practice, is coaching. And I know for a lot of business owners, the pushback that I often hear is, Jeffrey, I'm so busy in the business, I don't have time for coaching. Steve, you're a coach. When you were doing the investment banking side of things, you saw what happened when people didn't have coaches. Why don't you share for our listeners why coaching is so important and just the benefits that they're going to get from that.
So for a business owner, a business leader, I believe coaching is the number one job, because if they pick the right people and they coach them, they don't have to do anything else. And those people are going to do everything in the business. They're going to run the business. They're going to grow the business. They're going to come up with solutions that solve their problems. It's all about the people. So if you're in business, you're in the people business, and you can't afford to not coach your people, because it means you're not a leader. And then you should maybe sell your business or find someone else who can do that, because the business is not gonna grow without it.
Well said. So for mountain number one, all about the people, you've talked about the culture, some of the functions that go with that, and then the coaching. Let's go now to mountain number two with the purpose. I know with purpose, again, you don't mess around. I know your three practices are the vision, the strategy, and the alignment. So what's going on with that, Steve? Can you talk to us about that?
Yes. So the idea is we always create first mentally, and then we manifest it. So a company cannot achieve, sometimes there can be an emergent strategy. Some people talk about emergent strategy. We try things in real time and something comes out of it. And that sometimes works. But in most cases, it's much more powerful if you have a vision, if you want to take this company, because then you can socialize that vision and you can have everyone see the same thing, move to the same direction, and make the decisions that are necessary to get there. So the purpose is the vision. How you're going to get there is the strategy, and then how you socialize that and make sure everyone is on the same page, everyone understands it. It is completely woven through the fabric of your business. That's the alignment piece. And all three are important.
Steve, I couldn't have said that any better. And what I really like with what you're doing with your purpose and with the vision piece, practice number 4, you talk a lot about what's the company's why? Why are you doing what you're doing? And as we look forward to a future liquidity event, when you're preparing along the way, in step number 3 of the 9-step roadmap, it's thinking like a future buyer. Your narrative for that future buyer of why you're doing what you're doing and why your business over any other business is the best one to solve that problem becomes a cornerstone, not only for the liquidity event, but ties into the enterprise value and the deal and what that's going to look like. And you're getting that right in from day one when you start to implement your operating system right into the business. So we got the purpose going, you give us the vision and the strategy that goes behind that, and then you talk about the alignment just to put all that together. So now we go to mountain number 3. You're calling it playbooks. And I know for some people are saying, what are playbooks? What the heck is that? So Steve, talk to us about playbooks, why they're important in what you're doing with them.
Before I go to playbooks, I just want to reflect on what you said about the vision and how important it is for liquidity events. So what business owners, in my experience, how they get confused about the vision, they confuse the company's vision with their own personal vision. So sometimes, I talk to a business owner and say, I want to exit this company in 3 years. And my vision is that I'm going to sell the business and I'm going to become an author, or I'm going to go sit on this island, whatever their vision is. And if that's their vision for the company, then they're not going to be successful with selling the business, because no one wants to buy a company that the vision of which is the past owner who is already gone, and now the company doesn't know where to go, and the people feel despondent that their leader is gone. So it's really critical for the business owner to allow the company to develop its own vision, independent of the business owner. If they want to exit, they'll probably not even be part of that vision, but you want to create that for the business so that the momentum continues after the business owner exits, because the company is going on its own way. And this is what buyers, whether it's public or it's a private equity group, whatever it is, they want a company that is managing itself and it's got its own journey.
Before you jump into the playbook, I couldn't agree more. And for our listeners out there, in step 3, the future buyer in the Deep Wealth Experience, when you master the art and science of thinking like a buyer, you understand, and Steve, as an investment banker, I'm sure you saw this all the time. What do buyers want to do? Well, effectively, big picture wise, they want to minimize the risk, as much risk as they can minimize as possible. And Steve, to your point, as we go through each of these mountains, each of these 5 principles, we're minimizing the risk for the future buyer, but having a management team, as an example, that runs the business without the owner. So the owner can be abducted by aliens, come back 5 years later, and that business is not only there, but it's even better than it was 5 years ago, that's what a buyer wants to see. Or a buyer wants to see a culture that we spoke about earlier that's just thriving. So when you minimize the risk, you then allow the buyer to focus on, okay, what's my return on investment going to be? How quickly and how much is my ROI really going to be? And so the risk and the ROI really go hand in hand. And I like how you're dealing with both of those as we were going through these mountains. So from that said, and a terrific clarification on your point. So now to the playbooks. So what's going on with playbooks?
So that goes back to the people principle. So in order for the company, any company to grow, the people have to, especially at the leadership level, they have to grow themselves, which means that their impact, if I want to grow this company 5x in the next 5 years, my leadership team has to be 5 times more impactful, because if they are not, then no one else is going to be able to elevate below them. No one is going to grow below them. Now, how do they achieve that 5x impact at the leadership level? It means that they are constantly upgrading on what they are working. So if they start out with being doers and executing, being a salesperson or being an operation person who actually runs projects, they have to elevate from that to become leaders and to do the thinking piece, the strategic piece that the people below them cannot do, and delegate everything that can be systemized through playbooks to other people. So playbooks is a vehicle which you can use to pass down those processes that other people can be trained to be doing. It also is a blueprint for people who come into the business who don't have the experience and the intuition that you got as a business leader to be able to pick things up and be productive and successful. And that's what the playbooks do. They document the best practice in your business, and they give you a process to ingrain those best practices and optimize them over time. So you have a baseline and you keep improving your performance, and everyone else is able to pick things up, and you can stay at the strategic level and focus on growth and on new markets.
And Steve, I really like what you're doing there, because for our listeners, what Steve is talking about, and at Deep Wealth, we call this an X factor. Steve calls it playbooks. We call it the 4 points of clarity. And that's really where you're systematizing everything. You've documented everything. You have key performance indicators. People know what their job, role, and responsibility is. They also understand why they're doing that. But effectively, what you're doing is through that documentation, Steve, like you're saying, future buyer comes in, the future buyer says, okay, I have written documentation. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I don't have to be asking all these questions and starting from ground level. I'm actually going to keep things moving forward because I have all that in there. So it just makes things so much easier. And Steve, I know there's business owners out there that are saying, hey, Steve, I hear you. And yes, documentation is important, and I know we should be doing it, but we don't have the time. Everyone's too busy, or we don't have the money to bring somebody in to do that. Do you have any suggestions of what a business owner can do to actually get that documentation in place?
Very simple. And in Pinnacle, we describe a 5-step process of how to do that. And basically, I actually was inspired by a book that I read last year, Systemology, from David Jennings, who talks about this idea of separating the performance and the documentation of process. So you don't put it on the person who is your star salesperson. Don't ask them to document how they do the sale, because they might not even know how they do it. They are intuitively doing it. So what you want to do is you identify the playbooks that you want to document. You identify the person who embodies the best practice in your business. And then you have another person who will record that person and document that best practice. Then you basically circulate it to the right people to review it and finalize it and announce it. It's very simple. What we also talk about is that you want to optimize these best practices over time. You want to simplify it and automate as much as you possibly can, because that's the holy grail of playbooks, when you can automate your workflows and you actually don't even have to touch them. They just run in the background, and you elevate your people and they work on or high-level strategic thinking stuff that only people can do.
There you have it. Easier said than done, but it's not that difficult. If you put your mind to it, you know what? We can just about do anything that we want to do. So document. Steve has outlined why that's going to be so important, not just for yourself, but thinking down the road for your future buyer as well. So Steve, with the playbooks, we covered mountain number 3. Let's go to mountain number 4, and you're calling that perform. And you're having in there, your three practices are the rocks, the metrics, and the meetings. So what's going on with that? What should we know?
So these are going to be very familiar for many listeners. Rocks or OKRs, they have been around the last 40 or 50 years. And what they are is really, they are a method of goal setting. So the way we look at performance is that we have our purpose, we have our vision. So we know what are the why of the organization, what we call the pinnacle. So the big long-term goal, we have the medium-term milestones. And then we use these milestones to articulate our annual growth plan. So where do we want to be at the end of the year? What is going to be our profit and our revenue target? And what are going to be our major goals for the year? Which, you can have a goal around growing your revenues. You can have a goal around creating playbooks. You can have one around people. You can have one about growing your thought leadership, whatever it is. It could be developing your products. So set out a handful of major goals. And then every quarter, you get together with your leadership team and you look at your goals and you ask the question, by what means can we progress the company on these goals? What are going to be our fast rocks for this quarter? We use the acronym FAST as opposed to SMART because we believe that rocks have to be frequently reviewed. They have to be ambitious, not sandbag. They have to be specific and transparent. So if you focus on these attributes, then we are going to set really good quarterly rocks that the organization can rally behind and execute. And then you want to also measure the performance of your people in the organization every week using metrics so that at the end of the quarter, you're not going to be surprised. You are going to be hitting your numbers because your weekly metrics add up to your quarterly numbers. And then you have your daily activities that will help you to hit your weekly metrics. And then you have a meeting structure, which makes sure that you are creating the peer accountability so that people are holding each other accountable to hitting those metrics and achieving those fast rocks, as opposed to relying on the CEO to hold individually accountable people. So you want to create that culture of peer accountability where everyone wants to succeed and holding each other accountable to get there.
And Steve, I'm wondering, when it comes to introducing this into a company, the company has probably been disorganized. Everyone's doing their own thing. They're not as organized as the system that you outline here. What are some strategies that can be followed to get people, number one, not only to buy into the system, but once they've bought in, to actually follow through day over day, week over week, month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year? You get the picture. What can we do to make sure that the system actually sticks, people are using it, and they want to use it? We're not having to force them to use it. There's a difference between forcing someone to do it and they actually want to do it. So what can we do?
We talked about coaching earlier, how important it is that you as the CEO or business owner, that you coach your people. And guess what? So the CEO, probably they need a coach as well, because however successful you are, LeBron James has his coach, Rafael Nadal has a coach. So the greatest athletes in the world, they all have their coaches. Why? Because they need the outside perspective. They need to see themselves through the expert eyes of others. And they also need the accountability. They need someone that is going to be there and they know that they're going to be accountable. It just helps. It's human nature. It helps us keep us on track and honest. So if you want to implement a system like that, it's worthwhile considering hiring a coach who is going to help you implement. And what is special about Pinnacle compared to other systems like EOS? It's a fully customized system. It's not about a cookie cutter, one size fits all. It's about looking at each company where they are and meeting them where they are and bringing them the right tool at the right time and help them grow at their own pace that they can possibly do. Keep them in the flow. When you're in the flow, you are challenging yourself, but just a little bit so that you got the stimulation of a challenge, but you're not over challenged because that makes you burn out, and you're not under challenged because that will make you bored. If you can stay in the flow, then you can optimize your performance and you can get the fastest possible way. So if you want to have a system like that, it's worth learning the system, you're reading the book, understand how it works. But I also recommend that you hire a coach who can help you keep on track and who have seen a lot of different companies and knows what to help you with and keeps their ears on the ground and basically ropes in with you and help you climb up like a Sherpa to the pinnacle.
I like that. A coach is like a Sherpa to help you get to the pinnacle. And Steve, really what's nice about the system, it reinforces, one step reinforces the next step. So the coaching, as an example, is going to help with the rocks and the meetings and the KPIs. Now, if a business owner is saying, hey, you know what, Steve, read the book, sounds terrific, really liked what I saw, but you're right, we need some coaching. I need some coaching. Is that something that you're offering, Steve, from your side, that you'll be able to go in and work with the business owner and the team to help be that Sherpa to get them to the next level?
Of course, I do. So if your listeners are interested, then they can check out my website, stevepreda.com, or they can look at other guides in the Pinnacle system on pinnaclebusinessguides.com and have a conversation and see if that makes sense to them. If they like the guide, they can have conversations with multiple guides and see what it means to commit to a client. And I also recommend them to read the book Pinnacle, because that's going to give them a clear idea of what it takes to actually do this ascent to the top of the mountain.
Terrific. And speaking at the top of the mountain, last but not least, and really it's always a measure of how we're doing in this game of business, it's profit. And I know for your practices in the mountain number 5, profit, you talk about benchmark and then engineer and sustain. So what's going on there, Steve? What should we know about that?
So profit is really important for a business. And many people, when we talk about profit, they think about, it's all about the owner. The owner wants to get rich, building this company, making it profitable by limiting salaries and stuff like that. But from the perspective of the business, why you need profit is that profit is the oxygen. So if there's no profit, or if there's not enough profit, you're not going to be able to attract the best people. You're not going to be able to invest in state-of-the-art systems in the business, automation. You're not going to be able to do R&D, to differentiate yourself. So you really need money in order to put your business, to give all the resources to your business that your business needs in order to stay ahead of the competition. So that's why it's important that you are at an elite level of profitability in your industry. So benchmark is about figuring out what is that. So for a software company, it may be 50% of sales or higher. For a construction company, it may be 17% of sales. For a commodity company, it may be 10%. So every company is different. So you do well to figure out, and we talk about in the book on how to do that. So figure out what your elite level of profitability in your industry. And engineering is about creating the business that can deliver that elite level of profit. So engineering your business in a way so that you are going to be at that level. What it takes is that you pull on some levers, and we talk about the different levers. There are some low-hanging levers like cross-selling and repricing your products. And then there are mid-level Pinnacle tools. And then there's operational excellence, Six Sigma. So we talk about the different levers that you can pull. And when you had achieved best of class profitability, then what you want is you want to sustain that. You want to build a business that is essentially locks it in. It makes that sustainable for you to stay at that elite level. And it takes discovering and building your strategy stack. We call it strategy stack, those differentiating features of your business that are in combination is going to be really hard to copy for your competitors, and you can be very competitive in the long term. So one of the examples I talk about in the book is IKEA, which has been a dominant player in furniture manufacturing and retail for the last over 40 years. They are so dominant that the number 2 player is 1/10 of their size. Jysk, it's another Scandinavian company. So they are dominating the business because they have all their differentiated activities that in combination are really difficult. The supply chain, the design, the meatballs, the Swedish meatballs, and the way they buy their stores and so on. So that's the holy grail when you put this strategy stack together and stay at that elite level. And then you become a category of one in your industry. And that's what our goal is with Pinnacle, is to make you a category of one in the business in your industry.
I love it. We call that a blue ocean category of one. Regardless of what you call it, it's where you want to be. It's really the only place to be. That's where you're going to get the higher valuation when it comes to your liquidity event. And so, Steve, you've really done a terrific job of outlining the 5 mountains, the 5 principles that will take a business to the pinnacle of success. Roughly, how long would it take? So from a business starting really from, we'll call it zero, they're not doing any of these things. That's why they're going to be implementing your operating system, the Pinnacle operating system. How long at a good place, not too slow, not too fast, how long would it take to implement the system?
So here's the thing about the Pinnacle. It's not a finite, it's an infinite game. So when you reach your pinnacle, so let's say you start now and you set out the pinnacle maybe 10 years out and you reach that pinnacle, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get to the pinnacle and you're going to realize that it's a false peak because actually there's a higher mountain behind it. And then that's going to become your next pinnacle. But to specifically answer your question, so our goal is to quintuple the value of your business in 5 years. So wherever you are, we can safely promise you that if you work with a guide and you are coachable, then you are easily going to grow your revenues by 20% on average, and you are going to double your net profit margin in 5 years, and that's going to quintuple your value, possibly even grow it more because your value multiplier is going to grow as well. And wherever you are, you can do that. Now, some businesses do much better. So one of the examples we mentioned in the book is Discover Strength, which was a fitness business, and my co-author had them as a client for the last 10 years, and they went from profit of 700,000, and now they are, I can't remember exact numbers, but essentially they grew their value by 250 times over that 10-year period. So that's 50 times more than the 5x. So there are many examples of that that you can do more. And sometimes you do less. So if you are not coachable, if you're not executing, then you're going to grow less and it's going to be a less satisfying journey. But the 5x is a very safe thing because if you start working on your playbooks, if you start working on your strategy and differentiate yourself, it's going to be very easy to double your net profit margin. Unless you're already at an elite level, then it's going to be difficult.
Well, 5xing the business in 5 years, why not? That's where we want to be, and we're adding value, we're changing lives, we're solving problems, we're doing all the right stuff. Steve, the truth is, we could just go on and on about the 5 principles and some of your case studies and what you've been up to, but we're bumping up against time. So let's start to do this. As we begin to wrap up the episode, I have my favorite question that I get to ask, and I'd like you to think about the movie Back to the Future. And in the movie, you have that magical DeLorean car that can take you to any point in time. So Steve, I want you to imagine it's tomorrow morning. You look outside your window and there it is, the DeLorean car. It's not only sitting right out front, but the door is open waiting for you to hop on in. So you can now go to any point in your life. Steve, as a young child or a teenager, whatever the point in time would be, what are you telling your younger self in terms of life wisdom or lessons learned? Or, hey, Steve, do this, but don't do that. What would that advice be? What would that sound like?
I think it's play the long game. So don't get distracted by short-term results. I remember when I started my career, when I was in my early 20s, and I moved to London and I worked for an accounting firm from Hungary. And some of my college mates, they went to work for a local stockbroker and they were making all kinds of money and they were driving all kinds of cars. And then 5 years later, there was a recession and those businesses closed their doors and they no longer were driving those cars. At the time, it looked like I bet on the wrong course. I should have gone to London. All the opportunities in Budapest, and I stay there. So keep the long game in mind. Think about what you want to do, what you like to do, what are your talents, and what do you feel that is your calling, and try to focus on that and build your career, build your business. You don't have to boil the ocean. Try not to do too many things at once. Less is more. And I think you're going to have a great business. You're going to have a great career.
I love that. Play the long game. What terrific life advice for all of us. Play the long game. Well, Steve, we're going to wrap up the episode, but before we do, I'm going to put this into the show notes. If a listener would like to reach you, where is the best place online to find you?
So again, stevepreda.com is my website, and you can find me there. You can also look me up on LinkedIn, Steve Preda. There are not too many of us, and you'll find me there.
Terrific. And for our listeners, we'll have that in the show notes. It'll be a point and click. It'll save you time. It'll be super easy. Well, Steve, thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Deep Wealth Sell My Business podcast. And as we wrap things up, as always, please stay healthy and safe.
Thank you, Jeffrey. It's been a pleasure.
The Deep Wealth experience was definitely a game changer for me.
This course is one of the best investments you will ever make because you will get an ROI of 100 times that. Anybody who doesn't go through it will lose millions.
If you don't have time for this program, you'll never have time for a successful liquidity.
I mean, it was the best value of any business course I've ever taken. The money was very well spent.
Compared to when we first began, today I feel better prepared, but in some respects, maybe less prepared, not because of the course, but because the course brought to light so many things that I thought we were on top of that we need to fix.
I 100% believe there's never a great time for a business owner to allocate extra hours into his or her week or day. So it's an investment that will yield results today. I thought I will reap the benefit of this program in 3 to 5 years down the road. But as soon as I stepped forward into the program, my mind changed immediately.
There was so much value in the experience that the time I invested paid back so much for the energy that was expended.
The Deep Wealth experience compared to other programs is the top. What we learned is very practical. Sometimes you learn stuff that is great to learn, but you never use it. The stuff we learned from Deep Wealth experience, I believe is going to benefit us both.
I've done an executive MBA. I've worked for billion-dollar companies before. I've worked for smaller companies before I started my business. I've been running my business successfully now for getting close to a decade. We're on a growth trajectory. Reflecting back on the Deep Wealth, I knew less than 10% what I know now. Maybe close to 1% even.
Hands down, the best program in which I've ever participated. And we've done a lot of different things over the years. We've been in other mastermind groups, gone to many seminars, workshops, conferences, retreats, read books. This was so different. I haven't had an experience that's anything close to this in all the years that we've been at this. It's 5-star, A+.
I would highly recommend it to any super busy business owner out there. And Deep Wealth is an accurate name for it. This program leads to deeper wealth and happier wealth, not just deeper wealth. I don't think there's a dollar value that could be associated with such an experience and knowledge that could be applied today and forever.
Are you leaving millions on the table? Please visit www.deepwealth.com/success to learn more. If you're not on my email list, you'll want to be. Sign up at www.deepwealth.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode of the Sell My Business podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Reviews help me reach new listeners, grow the show, and continue to create content that you'll enjoy. As we close out this episode, a heartfelt thank you for your time, and as always, please stay healthy and safe.